good, everybody? Welcome back to another podcast from your favorite gang, the Official Otaku Crew. I'm your host, Zan, and our lovely casters, Tensa the Wrecked, Andy the Artist, Wreck the Endeavor.
What's up?
Don't forget, if you'd like to hear our beautiful voices, you can always do so on Anchor.fm, Spotify, and YouTube at the Official Otaku Crew. Before we jump into it, I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Audible, also another wonderful platform to listen to our past content. All right, everybody. So today's today's subject matter will be an interesting one. It's the new Scott Pilgrim anime, or if you want to call it that, it's definitely anime style. Uh, and we will be covering our feelings on it, I guess. And warning: there will be spoilers in this podcast. So. uh, So I guess starting with Tensa, because he seems to have a lot to say about it. What would you like to say about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off?
Well, yeah, you can say that he actually took off in the sense of he got taken off the show, literally.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, that's unfortunate.
like that was not like they done him so dirty. It's not even funny. You have your bait and switch protagonist. In this case, it's the love interest, Ramona. Yeah. That plays Columbo the entire time.
Columbo.
Yes, because she's a Columbo fan, while Scott is a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. You know where this goes.
Yeah.
And it's pain. It's pain because obviously they really catered to those kind of fans.
You think?
So yes, it was a bit pedantic in that sense, yes. But they do have elements of pointing out that the original Scott Pilgrim story did appear in two different references. One, it was the movie where they're going to make the movie.
Yeah, young Neil.
It turns and should I start with the big spoiler now?
Sure.
I mean, sure.
I mean,
why not?
It was warned. You've been warned, audience.
Yes, we have. That was the original timeline. This one is a separate timeline, entirely different.
Yeah.
So
Is it
let's
similar
just-
to the comics at all, or
No.
It's different.
No.
No. It's different. In fact, even the creator said no, that was not going to be like the comics at all. However,
Well, that's good.
the events of the comics did happen. In fact, there are not only like the movie, as they're filming a movie as a reference, and there's also jokes about the comics, like how Wallace turned people gay. Now he actually turned the vegan guy gay.
What?
Which I love. It's funny.
I think it was funny. There's also the future Scott thing, where the future Scott is actually Scott from the original story, which is fun in a sense. But it just so happens that some of the jokes of the old comic actually ends up being the bad ending for the original comic. In the sense of there's unresolved issues and whatnot, which leads to old Scott becoming evil Ryu from Street Fighter.
He's more like it's more like Akuma at that point.
No, he definitely became a Kuma, but like he has like like Ryu from Street Fighter 6, but with a white beard, but he behaves exactly like a Kuma.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wait, what? He's literally like the quote unquote the 8th evil X now.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I did look up to some interview stuff, and the creator did mention that this one's a possibility distant ending of the original comic, in the sense that the original comic can just end and be good and dandy, but this is a potential future, and it's kind of complicated but weird. But at
I
the
actually
same
think
time,
that's kind of cool.
it is cool. It is cool because they managed to play it as a sequel and a retelling at the same time.
Yeah, and also, well, that's I think now that you
And
mention that, it's kind of fun how the first episode is very. I don't know if it's like almost
it's
frame by
very
frame from the
similar.
comic, but it's frame by
It's-
frame of the movie. So, and then
it's-
just that one
it's-
change switches the story completely.
Yes,
It's basically like
And-
the comic, but really sped up. Like they cut a lot of content.
and starting from episode 6, there is a VR moment where we saw some elements from that movie, like how Scott beat all of the 7 X's, like the final shot of each of
Mhm.
them. So, but it just so happens that Scott is kind of an airhead, and in this case, because he didn't have his own character development, it led to quote unquote a rough patch, a bad breakup, a divorce, whatever you want to call it. And we find out that old Scott cannot deal with it. And on top of that, with the refusal to take responsibility for anything, which led to becoming he's his own worst enemy. He became the big antagonist of the show. So that was crazy in that sense.
It's an interesting twist.
Oh yes.
I like how it did it like that, because the biggest thing that I see nowadays with a lot of adaptations is that it's all being adapted like word like frame for frame of what it's adapted from. Like when you're adapting a film to a show, or a show to a film, or a movie to movie, like what Disney was doing, I've been getting disappointed by adaptations. I actually was kind of disappointed at the first episode when I thought it was just going to be the same movie. I mean, still a really good movie, so I wasn't too upset. But when it changed, I was like, you know what? I like a change, because that is more compelling. It's more fun. It leads to more different jokes, more creative freedom, and
point.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes, it's good, but the point of an adaptation is that it follows the show. This is not an adaptation. This is a sequel.
You're right. Yeah, sorry. Sequel, alternate universe.
Yes,
different timeline.
And they even have reference to the original timeline 12 years later, and even like 10 years after that one. And I'm like, what? So that's why it is a sequel and like it's not a full-on retcon, but
it kind of is. It kind of is. But I'll bring up those points after.
It is, but in the same way that Future Trunks and Dragon Ball works, because let's say that they don't really affect each other in that sense.
Well, that's what I was gonna get into, but I'll wait till after, because I want to hear what everyone else has to say. But it is actually a full-blown retcon.
I mean, it is and it isn't, because the original story is still there and it's not even invalidated. It is still there.
But we'll get into that. But what about you, Andy? What about you, Andy? How do you feel about the show?
I thought it was cool. I'll be honest, I'm still not completely finished of it, but one thing that impressed me when I first heard that they were making this show was that it's all the same cast from the movie. All the voices are the same people they got all the same actors, which I thought was a really cool thing to do, especially I find, because they didn't need to do that, but I think doing that kind of brings a familiarity to the audience, and also like it's a good way to draw people in. It's like, oh, we have the same group of people doing this. I think it was fun. But yeah, and I like the studio that does this. In fact, we've actually talked about this studio before in Star Wars Visions, because they did a Star Wars Visions episode. Science Saru.
Oh,
yeah, Double Man Cry Baby.
Yes.
And Adventure Time, and so they're a pretty good team, and they definitely copied the art style from the comics, which I think I don't know. I think overall it was a pretty fun idea and executed. I think executed well. There is a lot of comments saying like I know there was a big controversy that I saw online where people are saying like, oh, Scott Pilgrim's barely in any episodes. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you kill him in the second episode.
NANI?!
Yeah, it turns out
quote
that
unquote kill him. Yeah,
Yeah,
because he's not
they
actually dead. But yeah,
yeah,
But-
it's still the fact that Left 4 Dead for like almost the entire season, and it's like, well,
Michael Cera just couldn't be bothered.
Yes, like he was like, nah, I'm just gonna like chill.
Yeah, they only got him for like a couple hours to do voice acting, so they had to improvise.
What a waste of time.
I think it's funny.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah, I like
but-
being bamboozled.
but one of the things that I also noticed is that they also explored things that they haven't explored in the original movie. Like, not only the fact that some of the jokes that they said from the original movie are now part of their retelling. There are some unexplored parts of the show that kind of digs deeper into other characters, and we get to know them more for who they are.
I still haven't seen an ode to my favorite scene. I'm not sure if it's in any of the future episodes, but my favorite scene from the movie was when Knives comes to the door and the roommate's just kind of playing off like, oh, he's not here, but then, he
Jumps
tried,
out of the
like,
van.
yeah, he jumps off the window.
You know what? He just left.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if
Unfortunately,
you guys remember that scene.
yeah, but
like, oh,
unfortunately,
he
Knives
just
is
left.
barely in the show.
Okay, so that scene's not there. That's my
Well,
favorite scene.
Yeah, that scene is not exactly there, but like at least Knives is part of the band.
Yeah, I like how they developed her character that way, because in the movie she was annoying.
She
But in the
was
show, she's
annoying
actually cute.
because she was annoying because she was jealous and getting
Jealous and
cheated on,
obsessive.
and she was being cheated on by Scott. So you see where this is going.
Yeah,
And
he felt bad for her,
so-
but also, yeah.
Like she sucked, but her situation sucked. That's why in this case, Scott being gone kind of improved some relationships. And one of the things that I found weird is, well, Scott from the Takes Off universe never needs to fight any of the evil exes.
Not at all.
Like, in fact, when he comes back to start fighting them, they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to fight you. I'm just here for the premiere of the movie." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" like
Yeah.
he literally got told to fuck off.
Yeah.
But if it makes you feel better, the original Scott, 47-year-old Akuma Scott, actually killed them all.
I'm not sure how that makes anyone feel better.
But their deaths are not permanent because timeline weird things and how it works kind of
Video game
fucks up.
death. Video game
Yeah.
death, video game logic in a comic book. It's how it is, and I love it.
Exactly. Like they actually respawn.
Beautiful chaos.
So, but at the very same time, things got difficult because they explored Ramona's tendency to run away.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, we kind of grasped the core of the Aesop as Scott, at least from the original one, and Ramona from the same original universe, because they had unexplored character issues, which led to their separation, and it led to this catastrophic thing. Scott not able to own up for responsibility, and Ramon's tendency to run away kind of made the entire apocalypse in this, which I found kind of surprising. The fact that it took literally the end for them to realize that, yeah, they both have issues, but
Yeah.
they still have to point the finger at Scott as ultimately it's still your fault. Like, it's kind of both their fault, but I see where they were going.
Yeah,
with
it's like,
that.
oh, my
Mhm.
issues are bad, but not as bad as you.
Is that so?
Yes, because just to give you an example from episode 7 to episode 8, not only Scott is unable to deal with the heartbreak, he makes it worse by self-sabotaging his past self with the kiss barrier. And on top of that, when all things failed and got kicked out by his gay roommate, because the guy's married now, he basically holds up in a place for 10 years. You're literally like doing the training montage and suddenly became Akuma. Like, he has the Ryu beard, he actually has the bandana, and he even has the Akuma ore that comes with it. And in a sense, we see how scary Scott can be.
Okay, you guys keep mentioning Akuma, and my Street Fighter knowledge is so lax, I actually have to look him up. We are talking about Street Fighter, right?
Yes,
Yes,
it's Akuma from
He
Street Fighter.
turns into this guy?
basically.
Yes,
Are
Yes.
you sure?
Yes.
yes. Personality insane. Wants to kill everything. I could even say that his personality is closer to Evil Ryu from Street Fighter, but that doesn't matter. The point is that his mental health has deteriorated so hard that he becomes an omnicidal maniac.
My God, I'm just looking at pictures of this guy. Now I have to. Okay, now I have to see what Scott Pilgrim
you
looks
have
like
to.
in the last episode.
You have
It's
at
unfortunate.
least
but you need
older Scott or older. Yeah.
Oh, what did you say, Rex? Sorry.
It's one of those things where you need like an actual visual to kind of get like a full description.
Yes, he even has the bandana. All that was missing is Scott throwing Hadokens.
Yeah, that would.
That's all that was missing, and it would have been perfect.
That would have been a great video game reference. I mean, it would have been in theme with the comics and the franchise
Yes.
itself.
It's also the fact that all of the fight looks like a fighting game from Street Fighter 2, and they do Sonic, Columbo references. So that was something that I expected them to throw in, but no, that's not what they did. They did something else with it. But
I
they
mean,
fought
they
on
didn't wanna get-
they fought on something that looked like the moon, like as of Azure's Wrath. So if that helps.
I do. Rex?
Oh, I thought you were like going to ask me. So, what are your thoughts?
Oh no, yeah. I was wondering what were your
What's your
thoughts?
thoughts?
Oh, my bad. So, as far as the series itself, I can honestly say I haven't gotten super far in, but from what I have seen, like I am very impressed with how they did things. I do agree with what you were saying, both Andy and Tenta. Like I like how they had the original cast going for them. I also like the art and the animation style that they went with. There's little scenes here and there, and I also like the Street Fighter vibe too. Like, yes, they did that in the original film, but still, it was good to see it like on an actual like. It looks like Street Fighter. I
Yeah.
would have liked them to say Hadouken one time, but they sadly did not.
Yeah.
It's copyright.
Yep, that would have been copyright. Don't know how I got away with it, but they couldn't. Anyway, but what else was there? The other factor too is like I liked how it followed some of the comics too. Like there were some parts that really like they stuck to it. That I really liked, like with the also because it was a series, they got into more character depth. I'm agreeing with everyone that has spoken, basically. However, I don't know. There's still parts of me that feels like that. Maybe I'm just not that caught up yet, but I feel there's a little disappointing regarding like the storyboard. Like there's a points where I'm just a little lost. I might need some insight.
It's yeah. I mean, it is somewhat convoluted, admittedly, but I mean, most multiverse stories tend to be.
There's a lot to pay attention to, especially
Yeah.
visually too. There's so much visual storytelling that if you're not looking at the screen all the time, you will miss some important stuff. So it's a lot to pay attention to. It's a lot of themes, and it keeps to the theme. It keeps to the style of what Scott Pilgrim, in my opinion, is what it is. But I do understand the convolutedness to can be a little hard to follow if you're not familiar with the theme or if you're not constantly looking at it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like how they did it now. Like to put it into an animation, it shows more color than what the live action had. Like this is spoilers, but the scene where she's doing her hair for like more of the flower kind of style that she wanted, like that I did like. It showed more in depth of like her characteristics and like
artistically, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is in her name.
But just
The
scene, like the steps that she took to make her hair that color, that was
And it
I
and
found
in
that was
each
really well
episode it's different.
done. The
mhm.
episode is different, but I like that scene.
It's fun. It's fun.
It is.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that as well. I'd say I agree. Like for me, unfortunately, I was like highly, like ridiculously disappointed in the show. But the parts, I'll start for me with the things that I did very much enjoy. One, the animation was amazing, like 100% amazing. I freaking love the animation. It hyped me up so much when I saw the first episode, and I was just like, this is literally the best thing ever. And then, yeah, then episode 2 happened, and then everything went downhill for me. But for the first episode, though, I was just like, this is really cool. Um, the music, oh, I love the music. The music was so good. It
Yeah, the
was,
music, that was the thing that dragged me in too. It was like listening to all these songs. Wait, a lot of wasn't one of them by Brie Larson?
Yes, Brie
um,
Larson sang one of the songs.
Okay,
yes,
so it was Brie Larson because like I'm hearing
Yeah,
this song.
because one of the exes of Scott Pilgrim, like the celebrity, is voiced by Brie Larson. But Brie Larson is not the one singing the song. That's another voice actress, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
I thought
But
it.
me personally, I was more of a fan of like the more digital style music. It reminded me of the video game a lot.
Yeah.
What yes,
Like Adamanaguchi from the video
yes,
game.
yes. That's what drew me in as well.
I,
Anamagu.
yeah, when I heard
And
that, I was like, oh,
that was
I
cool.
love this.
But then the whiplash, like the big whiplash, though.
Yeah, no. For like I said, I would like to start with the things I did like. Like I said, there's the animation, the
And
music,
it's still good. Yeah.
and I love the fact that they brought back all the original cast of from the movie. Because admittedly, Michael Cera, not a good Scott Pilgrim at all in live action, but he has the voice. Like his voice was perfect for the role, in my opinion. Like he for the the animation, it was great. But Michael Cera does not look like Scott Pilgrim in the comics. Like he looks like Michael Cera.
I'll
Yeah,
To be
that,
fair, the comics are. I don't think anyone could look like the comics in real life.
No,
I
I
didn't mind
know.
Michael Cera in live
Yeah.
action as when he was early on in his career. I think personality wise, he was able to embody the role pretty well.
I
The voice, I definitely agree
I
with the
personally
voice part.
disagree. I personally disagree. But that's
That is fair.
because yeah,
that is
in the comics, just because his personality is extremely different than it was in the movie. Like very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I find it's because like Michael Cera, I don't know if it could just be my own observation, but I find he's a little
Awkward.
Hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by Audible. If you're like me and you want to find yourself a pastime but don't have enough time in the day due to school, work, or commuting, let me present to you Audible. Now, many of you have heard about Audible, but I'm going to tell you a bit more about it. Audible is an American online audiobook and podcast service that lets you enjoy all your audio entertainment on one app, whether it be, for example, a few in my library are His Dark Materials, Percy Jackson, Aragon, Witcher, Lord of the Rings, and many more for you to discover. You can always find audio for books you have been wanting to read or podcasts you've been dying to listen to. You will also find all the Otaku Crew up-to-date episodes lists available on Audible. As an Audible member, you can also choose one title a month to keep from the entire catalog, which includes the latest bestsellers and new releases. If you follow our Audible link, www.audibletrial.com/officialotakucrew, you can start a free 30-day trial. So go to Audible now and start your free trial. We now return back to your scheduled episode.
Not so much awkward, but like camera shy. Like even in his other movies, like I find whenever he's on screen, you can kind of feel that sort of awkwardness, that kind of
Yeah.
like,
Well,
he'll
that,
act, but he won't act like strongly.
yeah.
But then
Yeah, his awkwardness is kind of the charm he brings to his roles, which I will agree I personally
yeah,
don't think is really cool, but I mean that's just personal preference. When it comes to films and stuff, to each their own.
Me, like the thing is that I think Michael Cera is great as an actor for roles that would call for the shy, awkward character and everything. And personally, I think he does it great. Like he has played in roles where that calls for it. But it's just because Scott in the comics isn't that
Is
type
not
of
that
character.
kind of character in the first place.
He's a
He's
himbo,
more
and
reckless.
he's very much
He's
a himbo, and he's like
very
he's
reckless.
really, well, he's reckless, but he's also a lady killer. Like, I'm sorry, but you look at Michael Cera in the movie, and I'm sorry, he ain't slaying any any ladies, you know? Like,
damn.
he's considered pretty attractive in the comics.
He ain't
Okay.
getting those
Yeah, I think I would love a him, like if they ever remade the movie, I want a solid himbo, like a solid, well-known himbo.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Okay.
That's
Okay.
the,
I get your point. I get your point.
Yeah, he but like I said, in the show, like when I was watching it, honestly, he was great as animated Scott, and they actually made him have lines more accurate to what comic book Scott would be like. So like, because in the show, he wasn't so much like shy, awkward, and everything. He was very like he was very much a himbo, but he
Yeah.
was more like he wasn't like awkward himbo. He was just kind of like just dumb, you know. But
Yes.
that's
In
how he's
fact-
supposed to be.
Yes. Oh, yes. My favorite. It's a sugar daddy situation. A sugar what?
Yeah, basically. The so I was pleased with Michael Cera's performance as Scott in the show, 100%. I thought he was perfect, and I also thought that the rest of the cast also did great. Like honestly, I 100% enjoyed all of that. It's the now for the parts I didn't enjoy, yay! So
Let's get into it.
let's get into it. I'll probably ask you guys questions in regards to my opinion on this, but but it's more just like I said, this is more my opinion than it is anything else. So, for starting right off the bat on episode 2, we have Scott Pilgrim quote unquote die. So the thing is, I'm also different than you, Andy, on this, where I actually do love accurately told adaptations. I don't like changes, and if there are changes, at least nothing too drastic that just essentially makes the writer make their own thing. I would rather if somebody wants artistic freedom, they can take the IP and then make it grow somehow. So let's say perfect example, like let's just say you have Lord of the Rings, right? Lord of the Rings is not a 1-to-1 copy of the books, and I don't think anybody expected it to be because it's too much. But
Too big,
they're
yeah.
also some of the most successful movies in the world of all time, and they
Oh.
are very
will-
close adaptations.
We
I
did
will
say that
point
this wasn't an adaptation, though. I
No,
miss
yeah, that I agree. I'm
Yeah.
just saying in
I'm
general, I am.
also going to point out that series has been literally written by the original creator too. So there's that you
For
need to
what?
mind.
Oh, you mean
For
Brian Lee O'Malley?
I'm talking about the taking Scott Pilgrim Taking Off is still written by the one who wrote the original comic.
Yeah, I know, but that's just a person, and he's still not invaluable. I could
So
I
would
could
you?
I could write a book, like let's say I wrote a series of a book, right? And
Yes.
then I end up growing a massive fan base. Everybody loves it. And then I
Yeah.
create a new book, but every single person in that book is completely out of character. You don't even recognize them anymore.
It's not. Now you're exaggerating because the characters were still recognizable as who they were.
Well, no, but that's where I was going to get to. So continuing
Yeah,
on with the
but
things I don't like.
go ahead. Yes. Go
Yeah,
on.
what one of the things I don't like was the characters. The characters were very much changed from their comic book selves because I read the comic books. I love the comic books. Like I'm a huge geek with those comics. The for example, Wallace, in my opinion, is a lot more rude and snarky in the show than he is in the comics. Like in the comics, he's actually kind of a sweetheart. He's probably one of the least flawed characters in the show. The only thing he really does that's quote unquote bad is he tends to steal everybody's boyfriends.
Now that's fucked up.
But which is a running gag. But but like he's actually pretty sweet in he has his sarcasm and everything, but it's like a sarcasm with a hint of like I care about you or I genuinely care.
Jerk with a heart of gold, as we call it.
Exactly. So, and that's why Wallace is actually my favorite character. But he was a bit more rude and less caring, especially like when he thought Scott was dead. Like he just didn't seem to care at all. And like, and that's not how Wallace is.
It's also felt like this guy was sick of Scott in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, that's kind of mean because he actually really cared about Scott a lot.
Fun fact.
And then,
if you reach to the future where you meet old Scott and you see old Wallace, and old Wallace does care about old Scott.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of weird. You know?
There's a few like I said straight up contradictions to certain characters. Like there's that with Wallace. Todd turning gay was really
it was a reference to the joke that he can turn everyone gay. And
no, that I know that was a reference that he turns everyone gay, but it's not really that. It's just that the what really happens in the comics, he doesn't turn people gay. He makes those who are gay come out of the closet.
No, he actually made a reference where he said that there was a power where he turns everyone gay, and in this version, it actually becomes an actual power.
I don't know this reference, but anyway, but in general though, Todd being gay was also kind of weird because his character is very much about being kind of a lady killer, and he's also but like very disgusting lady killer though. Like he's essentially Andrew Tate.
I hate everyone equally. Don't come at me and call me sexist or racist or any of these things. I hate everyone. I don't care if you're black, white, straight, gay, man, and woman. I hate you anyway.
You know, like he's yeah. So like, and Todd is very much an unlikable character. So even in the show, he's unlikable. But
he's
like
unlikable for another reason. That's what it's.
Yeah. But there's that. There's also
it's not as bad as Gideon Graves.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Gideon, they did my boy really dirty because
they destroyed him.
Because and the other thing is the whole show doesn't actually make sense if you read the comics and that's why I said it is actually a full-blown retcon because don't forget the whole thing that sets the show in motion, right? There's two things that set the show in motion, which literally retcons the original comics. One is Scott Pilgrim turning evil after the events of the comics. There's a whole arc in the comics. There's an entire arc in the comics that goes over what he supposedly like the whole adult like older Scott is a is just repeating Nega Scott, which makes no sense. It's literally just
No, that's the thing. Old Scott is supposed to be the stand-in for Nega Scott.
yeah, I know, but it doesn't make sense because he's what happens canonically after the comics, right? But the events of Nega Scott.
Not canonically. I'll be more clear on that.
No. But I'm saying in terms of the show.
Yes.
In terms of the events of the show, that the original comic had happened, and after the events of the comics had happened, several years later, older Scott happened. But that means older Scott did experience the whole Nega Scott arc, which just renders the whole story redundant. And that's the first that's the first major contradiction.
So what you're saying is that they're repeating the same Nega Scott arc.
Exactly. It just makes the whole thing of him growing up and becoming self-aware and everything and developing as a character alongside Ramona. That's the other thing that people tend to ignore about the comics is she was a deuteragonist, and she was explored, not as deeply as in the show, but she was explored. So a lot of people tend to ignore that fact about her in the comics, which I don't understand because it's the stories about the two of them.
Which makes sense, and now not only they flipped it, and they kind of removed one character like for most of the show.
Yeah, there is that. That's the first major contradiction. The second major contradiction is the whole Gideon segment, which is so the thing is in the comics. If you've read the comics, you would know that Gideon has a special power called the glow, and the glow is how he created the League of Evil X's. They're all under his mind control and they don't even realize it. So not only would Matthew Patel not be able to defeat Gideon because Gideon is also canonically like way more powerful, but
it's supposed to be the top one.
It's not just that, but it's also the fact that Matthew Patel is under his mind control. So Gideon literally just needs to snap his finger and say no, and Matthew Patel does it. Like he's completely under Gideon's mind control. So Matthew Patel in the show gaining the confidence to stand up to Gideon and then take over and everything would never happen so they completely ignore the glow from Gideon, which doesn't sound that important, but it's actually a huge.
It probably is.
It's a huge aspect of the comics. Like Gideon having the glow is how.
It also goes with the original character because I heard that he was very keen on control, and having the glow goes well with his personality.
Yes, but there is that, but it's also the fact that Gideon has the glow, and the glow is essentially how he became a villain. It's how he built up his his empire that he loses to Matthew Patel. It's how he basically built up everything, and to top it off, Gideon also had like a bunch of mind slave clones of Ramona, which is really creepy, but like that's part of it. That's part of his thing. And also they do explore a bit of his backstory where he manipulated his exes and stuff before Ramona. And
no. In this one, they changed the entire character because one his backstory is that he was kind of a dork.
Yeah, now his backstory is he's a dork, but in the comics
let's make it worse. You're ready?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Goose. I know.
Yes, Gordon Goose. He's not actually Gideon in this sense.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's bad.
While in the original story, Gideon Graves is Gideon Graves. Like he is born Gideon Graves. So I could argue as far as in the retcon version Gordon Graves does not exist, and that's just a persona. Sorry.
A persona.
A because
Floridian
because
slip
in,
there, eh?
because in the retcon version or the taken off version, he said that he had to build a persona to leave his old personality behind. So,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
no. I know the whole story about like the character in the show. It's just I'm just
the other
pointing
one
out
is like
I'm pointing out the
it's the same thing.
contradictions from the comics. And
This is
then
yeah.
yeah, so the those are the big contradictions from the comics that I don't like, as well as like, and because of those two major contradictions, obviously it would shift the entirety of the story, which it did. And then also the other things I didn't like was the literal bait and switch. There was the bait and switch, and then they knew what they were doing too, because even when you watch the trailer, they only showed parts of the first episode. They knew exactly what they were doing. And then to top it off, the new series, while yes, was partly written by Brian O'Malley, it was also partly written by what's his name? The director who did the movie.
Yeah, there was co-written writings on that one.
Something right. I forget. Ed Gordon Wright. But
I know who you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So
it was not a sole written project. It was like
it was Brian Lee O'Malley, him, and one of the showrunners for Netflix.
Yes.
And I know that the showrunner for Netflix obviously had the biggest power in terms of
that's probably why there was a biggest bait and switch in the first.
Yeah, because no, but get this though. Get this. So the showrunner for sure, because obviously Brian Lee O'Malley had to hand over the IP to Netflix in order for it to be hosted on Netflix. That's how it works.
That's just
So so obviously the showrunner from Netflix has the most say in what goes on. You could say it's Brian Lee O'Malley's IP, but it's their platform. They get to choose.
Yes. In fact, I'm glad that you mentioned that it is their platform, because guess what? From episode 1, there was a Netflix reference.
Yeah, but I know instead of working at Amazon, she works for Netflix. That I know. But but I was gonna say though that the biggest thing with that is that have any of you watched the He-Man show on Netflix?
I have not, but believe me,
Okay, so
no. Before you finish, because I do watch a YouTuber called The Yellow Flash, and I've seen all of the critics and I've seen all of the clips, and I'm still crying.
Yes, so with the He-Man show, at least they had the I guess you could say, quote unquote, respect to not put He-Man's name in the title, whereas in Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, they literally put Scott Pilgrim's name there. But the He-Man show was called Masters of the Universe, and they took the main character out. They made his what's her name? The female protagonist. Yeah, Shiva. They made her the new protagonist, which is what they did in Scott Pilgrim. And then they also basically
they had evil He-Man at some point.
There was evil He-Man, then there was evil Scott. There was they retconned the whole story. Then get this, what also happens at the end? She becomes a goddess. Ramona becomes a goddess.
Coincidence? I think not.
Yes. They exactly.
It was when I saw the parallels, I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah. I did skip out the fact that yes, they did the fusion to Ultimate Goddess, and I'm like, and we're like, oh dear.
Now see, here's one thing though. Me personally, I did believe that it was a good idea to explore the evil Exes and Ramona deeper. I would have been fine with that. But what I wish they did is, one, not bait and switch everybody, and instead of calling Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, call it like Ramona Flowers, Another Story or something like that. And it would be a direct sequel. They don't retcon the original story, but rather they continue after the events of the comics. And yes, they're able to do that because canonically, and it's been stated as canonical by the author in an interview after the last comic came out, that the evil X's didn't actually die. They all teleported back home and ended up like having some self-reflection and eventually growing into better people. So
And they did the same thing with episode 8.
yeah, but the thing is that it would have been better if they made a show called like Ramona Flowers, and then it's a direct sequel, like I said, not a retcon or anything like the parallel timelines, but literally after the events of the comics, and then they just it's like Ramona going to see her exes and like making like bearing the hatchet, helping them develop as people and everything, and exploring their backstories and exploring Ramona's backstory with them. That would have been cool.
But and guess what? There was some bring the hatchet with some of them because part of the point of the show was about closure and about what and about things that are not too late to be fixed. So the fact that you've mentioned that, yes, it could be years later, but right before, like let's say Scott marries Ramona, they could actually explore that like in their older years before the honeymoon stuff or anything.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways they could have went about it other than retconning the original comics and stuff like that. And to top it off, I also didn't like. Also Brian Lee O'Malley technically threw a bit of shade at the fans. I don't know if you saw that in the interview, but he basically threw a bit of shade. He said the reason why he made the show the way it was because he felt that his audience couldn't understand the story of the original comics, which is weird because in my opinion the show's story is much more convoluted than the original. So
and
take that with
I will. And he also said in an interview that it doesn't really discredit the comics, and the comics are still 100% canon, but he treats the taking off as an alternate future.
Yeah, I know, but it still doesn't make sense as an alternate. It still doesn't make sense as an alternate future though, because a lot of characters before this alternative future happens are still out of character. Well, oh yeah, that's one last thing I want to mention. Envy Adams showing up.
And you did mention that they also erased all of the character development with the Nega Scott thing.
Exactly. But there was the one last thing I wanted to mention. I forgot about this. Envy Adams showing up to Scott's funeral at that moment in time. But it was so out of character. It's so random because at that moment, both in the show and in the comics, at that moment in time, like it doesn't make sense because Envy really didn't care about Scott. Like she completely, he dropped off the earth for her. Like she didn't care about Scott whatsoever. The only reason in the comics she even went back to him at all was for the evil X thing and because Ramona. That's it. That's literally she didn't care about Scott.
And here, she just came here to shit on his grave.
That's rough, buddy.
I know.
Come and just widow in the worst way possible. They could have done it a little better. Personally, they could have given her a little more feedback, but I found just a random act of just okay, dead.
For me, the satisfaction of seeing her getting cucked by a guy was funny.
Honestly, I was kind of expecting her to show up to the funeral and fight somebody. I thought it was going to be like a reverse Uno where Ramona's going to have to fight Scott's exes.
I thought the same thing.
I thought it was that in the beginning as well.
Yeah.
I was like, that would have been an interesting type of story to get to do.
It's like
you would change the whole nature of the comics and stuff.
We already have knives ready to fight Ramona. So, and then you have the big axe. So it would have been funny if there was more. And we're like, you metaphor, how many axes do you have?
So yeah, that was those were my opinions. Obviously very different, but from the rest, but that's fine. I think that's another reason why I love these podcasts is we get to explore different opinions on different subjects, and you know, I like to hear what you guys had to say too. I thought it was interesting points of view. Even some things were mentioned that I hadn't yet heard, and even Rec had brought up some good points as well. So that was good.
The one
That
thing that
means,
specifically annoyed me, however,
Hmm?
was when Ramona was telling the story of her first boyfriend. She actually had to specify non-white, non-jock, and that still annoys me.
oh, I mean that happened in the comics too, though. To be fair,
It's
I-
it's still cringy.
eh, it was funny. I don't know. I was okay with it as long as it was in her character. I was fine with it.
Fair enough.
It's just deviations to her original character. But that's like I said, different opinions, right? We all have different opinions. So,
But
agree about
I
that
would
with
say that as
oh,
long if you didn't care about the story and you just wanted to watch something and you turn your brain off, it's not as bad as if you were closely following the show.
yeah. And what were you gonna say, Rick?
No, I was agreeing on your statement where it's like it's great to have all these characters, but when they just suddenly just go completely out of character, we kind of wonder like where were they going with all this? Like we can't just once a character development happens, if there is going to be a sudden change, there needs to have like an influence of some sort. Otherwise, it's just going to make everyone give a middle finger of what's going on.
Yeah, it feels very what's the word I'm looking for? Feels very uncanny, in my opinion.
Okay, that's a good word too.
So anyway, I would like to say thank you guys for those opinions and everything and your reviews on the show. Much appreciated.
Anytime.
I thought that was an awesome conversation. I don't know about you guys, but I liked everything we talked about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a fun show to watch. I definitely recommend seeing it, regardless of any of our opinions. If you've seen the comics or not, I think it's still worth a watch.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing. I would say it is worth a watch. Definitely. I like even if I don't like the show personally, like let's just say you're somebody who, for example, never read the comics, definitely watch it. Because if all you have to go on is the movie, chances are you're gonna love the show over the movie. Like
It's
the
short episodes
animation,
too.
yeah, exactly. Like the animation, the sound, everything is so good. That alone could like draw in a crowd. It's great. I'd still recommend watching the show, regardless of my personal standpoint on it.
I mean, hey, I've read the comics, I've watched the movie, and right now I'm a few episodes in, so I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not a waste of anyone's time, that's for sure.
yeah. So, well, I'm glad we covered the subject of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and yeah. So thank you again to Andy, Tense, and Rec for the opportunity. I personally enjoyed it, and I hope everyone listening feels the same. And please tell us what you think on social media. You can reach us on Twitch, TikTok, Discord, or our Instagram at TheOfficialOtakuCrew. And yeah, I mean, you can always write comments on there, see, and we'd like to hear what you have to say about the show and how much you enjoyed our podcast. So thank you so much for listening in. We appreciate each and every one of you. This is the official Otaku Crew signing out till next time. Peace.